Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Shrouded Truth. Today we're diving into a fascinating and unsettling topic. How much can someone's mental state be reflected in their artwork? That's the question we're going to explore as we take a look at the creations of artists who lived with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia has always intrigued me, not because it's mysterious in a romantic sense, but because of how deeply it distorts reality. I've read accounts by people suffering from it, trying to put their experiences into words. The problem is, language itself is built on a shared version of reality. Their experiences simply don't fit into that framework. But art doesn't have those limitations. It allows glimpses into that nightmarish world, and in many cases, what emerges is both beautiful and terrifying. Let's begin with Carlo Zinelli. Carlo grew up in the Italian countryside, worked as a farm laborer, and later joined the Alpine Corps during the Spanish Civil War. The horrors of battle were too much for him. After just 2 months, he broke down, suffering from paranoia, terror, and delirium. By the age of 31, his behavior had become so erratic that he was committed to a psychiatric hospital and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. At first, he withdrew almost entirely, barely speaking, but when left alone, he compulsively carved graffiti into walls with whatever he could find: rusty nails, spit, even blood. His obsession with creating became so intense that doctors finally gave him a proper outlet. They set up a small art space for him, and Carlo began painting obsessively for hours each day. Over 18 years, he created more than 2,000 works. His paintings are filled with repeating faces and figures, swirling patterns, chaotic yet ordered designs, and religious symbolism. Eyeballs stare back at the viewer, words spiral across the page, and his canvases pull you into the restless mind of their creator. Now compare that to Johann Nope, born in the German Black Forest in 1866. His life seemed ordinary at first, but after his mother's death, paranoia began consuming him. He grew distrustful of his wife and friends, turned to alcohol, and eventually attempted suicide. He spent the rest of his life in an asylum, plagued by delusions that he was constantly persecuted and chosen by God for endless suffering. His art reflects this torment: long, flowing lines of text, compulsively repeated patterns, crucified figures, and obsessive religious imagery. Faces fragment, surrounded by halos made of spikes, while birds and eyes appear again and again. Despite being decades and miles apart, his work echoes the same themes as Carlo's. These similarities are striking. Religious symbolism, compartmentalized sections of the canvas, repeated shapes, and endless patterns that hint at the chaos of thought. Henry Cockburn, another artist with schizophrenia, described hallucinations where everything became ring street hollows, ivy, even jewelry shop windows. He called them his polka dot days. That same imagery of rings and circles surfaces constantly in schizophrenic artwork, as though the mind's torment carves patterns into reality itself. Paul Ghost, a trained artist hospitalized in 1917, also filled his art with these themes. His works show halos that don't radiate outward but instead push inwards, as if crushing the head of the subject. His drawings echo Johann Copp's crucifixion imagery, arrows and daggers striking the heart, and patterns that swirl into claustrophobic repetition. They embody the idea of the influencing machine, a concept described by psychoanalyst Victor Tosk in 1919. He explained how many schizophrenic patients imagined elaborate machines made of wires, wheels, and rays designed to control their thoughts and persecute them from afar. This belief shows up again in the drawings of James Tilly Matthews, who in 1797 described a machine he called the heirloom. It was a complex contraption, run by a gang of criminals, tormenting him with magnetic rays. A century later, Jacob Moore, another patient, drew his own version of the influencing machine, depicting hypnotic waves and electrical forces pulling thoughts from his brain. The imagery may differ in detail, but the themes are eerily consistent: waves, machines, and invisible forces controlling the mind. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we see the haunting work of Brian Charnley. Diagnosed with schizophrenia at 18, He was a talented painter, frustrated by how medication dulled his creativity. In 1991, he made a drastic decision. He stopped taking his medication and began painting self-portraits to capture the unraveling of his mental state. Over weeks, his art devolved from coherent portraits into disturbing abstractions. Waves of influence appeared, nails piercing eyes and mouths, halos of torment surrounding his head. His paintings showed paranoia, voices, and a terror of losing control. Just 2 months later, overwhelmed by the strain, Charnley took his own life. His final painting was a smear of red, brown, and yellow, a chaotic blur, perhaps the ultimate depiction of a mind consumed by schizophrenia. Other artists reflect similar themes. August Naderer saw visions of thousands of hallucinatory images in the sky, which he described as the Last Judgment. Unica Zierin, a writer and artist, used her work to express her disordered inner world, often destroying her creations during psychotic episodes. Adolf Wölfli, confined to an asylum, obsessively filled thousands of pages with drawings and writings, his delusions of grandeur pouring into his art. Alois Corbus, once a governess, developed obsessive delusions of being in romantic relationships with powerful men, her artwork filled with symbolic figures of fantasy and desire. What's most unsettling is the universality of these themes. Regardless of time, place, or background, artists with schizophrenia often return to the same imagery: eyes, rings, repeated patterns, religious symbols, machines of control. These works act like a mind map of the illness, showing how thoughts fragment, loop, and distort under the weight of psychosis. And yet, they also reveal something deeper. Many of these symptoms are exaggerations of things we all experience: paranoia, repetitive thoughts, a tendency to see patterns, or the instinct to find meaning in chaos. In that sense, these artworks don't just speak about schizophrenia, they reflect something fundamental about the human mind itself. Looking at them is disturbing not only because of their content, but because of their familiarity. We see in them a distorted mirror of our own thoughts. That's what makes this subject so fascinating and so chilling. Art from the schizophrenic mind shows us how fragile our grasp on reality can be, and how close all of us might be to the edge of that darkness. Thank you for joining me today on The Shrouded Truth. If you found this dive into the world of schizophrenic artists thought-provoking, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more explorations into the hidden, unsettling corners of history and the human mind. Until next time, stay curious and stay aware of what lies in the shadows.